Out of curiosity, in the room, who is using what the screen called Planning Workbench currently?
I use it in 2 a lot.
In 2. Mm-hmm. Yep, that's good. So
I
we got
haven't
one.
played with it in 4.
Great. So I'm going to start then, as people haven't seen it, don't really know a lot about it. We'll kind of start pretty basic, and that's great with me. It's easier for me to work that way. So the Planning Workbench is one of 2 planning screens that we have that both share the same data. The Planning Workbench is all about quantities. It's all about the quantity of inventory that I need to make specifically, not purchase at this point. So it's all about making stuff. Let me just get some data up here, and it'll make me a little easier to see. I'm just going to set my date back a little bit, because my demo data has a bad habit of staying locked in time where you and I move forward. So this down on the bottom, this section down here is telling me what I'm making. So that's my production schedule, and I'll talk about that more in detail as we move forward. This top section I want to dispose of pretty quickly and just talk about what it's about. This is allowing you to set settings for everything we're going to see down here. So for example, the one that most notable that I want to bring up are these dates. So we can control what the horizon looks like on this screen. So in other words, for 5 days, I want to see day columns for 5 days. And then as I get further away from that, I want to switch over to, say, 2 weeks. In other words, now I'm starting to aggregate data, batch tickets, planned orders, etc. And then as I get past 2 weeks, I'm going to switch over to months. That piece, starting with, again, a system back a little bit, starting from here and doing all that takes me to October the 18th. Okay, so this calendar, this schedule that I'm looking at, takes me through the middle of October. If I don't do anything, I'm going to see every item that's on the schedule. Talk about what that is, but we haven't done any filtering here. The rest of these are really filtering capabilities, so that I can look at certain cuts of the data. I might have 2 production facilities, and I want to see one facility versus another facility, so I can dissect that. And whether you physically have a facility or not, 2 facilities or not, you might actually want to think about an R&D facility. That would allow you to take out anything that R&D is doing out of the schedule and not have to look at it. So you might want to, even though you've only got one physical plant, you might want to think about having a logical facility for R&D. Planners, it's basically a free field that can get associated with either the finished good or the formula. And it allows you to group items together by who schedules it, who plans it. That could be a person, that could be a department, that could be a name of certain types of products, liquids versus powders as examples. So these are tied to the formula and or the finished good as kind of people, or who's scheduling. The next 2, process cells and fill units, are the pieces of equipment associated with the processing. A process cell is tied to the formula. So it's a mixer, it's a grinder, it's a fermenter, it's those kind of things that you're using in processing. A fill unit is the equipment used for packaging. So a process cell is associated with a formula, and a fill unit is associated with a finished product. Okay? So I could see simultaneously what tanks that I'm using as well as what packaging lines that I'm going to be using. Okay? On one batch, you've got both. You've got the line, or the production line, being the process cell, and then I've got a filling line tied to the finished good. We recently added, no, maybe not. No, I didn't. We've added a batch type, but that's not what that is right now. So I can also limit whether fill or mix batches. I can limit the range of formulas, and then we added a few versions ago the ability to support decimal precision. So I'm not interested in 0.00025 on the display, just giving me in whole numbers. So that's what that decimal precision is about. As soon as we added it, I set it to 0 and I've never looked back. So these are selections that I've got. I'm just going to minimize it because we're not really all that worried about it in the rest of this conversation. All right. So now what I'm looking at these are formulas. Okay? So everything, all these are components that can be made from the same formula. Okay, so in your case, you might make a liquid that can go into multiple finished products. That's what you're seeing here. You might have a one-to-one relationship, and that's what we're seeing here. So this is a component, and this is a formula. We start with the premise that you're going to want to schedule like formulas together. There are some companies, most companies I think do that. They think in terms of, all right, if I'm running red paint, I want to be able to put all these finished packaged together. I might make a bigger batch to deal with all of my red paint. And I put some in gallons and some in quarts and some in pints. That's the concept. That's what we start with. We have some clients that actually look at it from a finished good perspective. In other words, what fill unit is being used. What is it going into jars? So it's easier for me to flip formulas staying on the jar line because I have to reconfigure packaging. And it takes me much longer to reconfigure packaging than it does to clean out a tank. So you can go either way with it. Our default position in the way I'm showing it here is we're thinking more in terms of the formula. So I'm representing this as a formula. So I'm saying, here's my formula, and that's everything that I can make. But if I wanted to, I could do a selection here, say, on the fill unit. That becomes a field available to me. Facility. There it is. Oh, it's already there. Flip that over. And so now what I can see is everything that can be made in that fill line. So that's my bottle line. And this is everything being made in the bottle line grouped together. And then I might go to another finished product. In this case, this is a beer example. So I probably have a can line. I've got a fermentation tank, et cetera, and so on. So I can look at it by piece of equipment first, and then formula within that. Okay. So I can flip those, and that's all being controlled by this header section right here. It's just a grouping. Depending on the order, it will group, it will sort and group based on that. Bring it back to more simplistic terms for a second. All right, so what we're looking at now is a couple pieces of data to bring up. These are components. If I scroll over to the right, I see quantities associated with this out into the future. Now, one of the first things you're probably going to notice is the colors, or at least I hope you do. For us, colors become important. This is our way to communicate to you that MRP has found something that you probably ought to go take action on. You ought to at least look at it. It is a system-generated planned order. In other words, the system has found that you've got more demand than you've got supply. Remember, we in the spreadsheet or the PowerPoint that we did, and it kicks out a planned order. That's what's showing in red. If there is at least one planned order in this time bucket, this happens to be, we're out here in weeks now. If there's at least one planned order in that bucket, this number turns red. Again, drawing your eye to it to say I probably ought to go at least look at it and make some decisions. Conceptually or ideally, what you want to be seeing is something that looks kind of like this. For the next handful of days and weeks, I don't really have much of an issue. However, inside this space, and I can almost set an arbitrary space, like right about here, if I'm seeing anything red inside this, I probably need to be taking some pretty quick action on it. So what's happening here, this 2 and this 14, let me just open this up a little bit. Okay. What I've got is the system. This is just a list of all planned orders. We'll talk about how the planned orders got there in a minute. We'll go through the math of all of this. But this is just a listing. I'm about to say a summary, but it's basically a filtered list of everything going on, only showing you planned orders. Here are my exceptions. These are the times in which I need to take action on something. My demand has outpaced the supply, and on this date I'm going to be out of inventory. And it kicks out a planned order, gives it a number. Don't get too hung up on what the number is. It's an internal number. For a unit of inventory, probably maybe arguably flip those columns. So quantity per stocking unit of measure. Okay. So 2 each is there. I've got a start and end date. So I have a lead time set up in the system That lead time, by the way, is set up in Vicinity. So on the component, subcomponent tab, there's a manufacturer lead time. That's where it's picking that up. So it says that if I want it by the 1st, I need to start it by the 30th, the first record. I've got a 1-day lead time in effect is what I'm saying here. And that's the quantity that I need that I'm going to be short. And in a moment, I'm going to find out why I'm short. But these are all my planned orders. Now let's assume I figured out why it is, and I'm deciding I'm going to do it for a second. Again, we'll backfill why it is in a second. What I can do is I can come in and I can change this if I want to. This is just a suggestion from MRP. MRP says for you to come back to your safety stock, assuming I've got safety stock checked, for you to come back to safety stock, you need 2. Haven't done anything further with that. It just says you're going to be short 2. I could, if I want to, come in and say, I'm going to go ahead and make 10, because 10 makes sense. You can make that call. You can call that audible. You can increase it to whatever you want. I can change dates as well if I want to. And then the other piece I want to point out is this firming. When I firm this, a couple of things happen. Most notably, most visually, the color goes from black to red, a red-black. In other words, I've acknowledged that I've seen it, and I've acknowledged I'm going to do something with it. By firming it, and oh yeah, by the way, committing changes, i.e. save everything I'm doing, if I save that in this status, the next time MRP runs, it will not get rid of it. So MRP will delete all these unfirmed planned orders before it starts to get you back to a base position, and then it'll start adding planned orders again. Hence why, don't get too married with a planned order number, because it's going to disappear tonight and get a new number, unless it's firmed. And of course, we don't change batch to get numbers either. So if you've firmed a planned order, we're going to keep that planned order number. It'll stay there until either you convert it to a batch ticket or you unfirm it. And then eventually the planned order will get deleted if it's not firmed and reissued if it's needed, if it's still needed.
So if the planned order, say we created a planned order, is the
Manually?
order number, yes, is the order number format different so that the system would recognize, hey, this was manually created, I shouldn't delete it, even if it isn't firmed?
The only way it's going to keep from deleting a planned order, whether you created it or otherwise, is if it's firmed.
If it's firmed, okay.
Technically, you can assign your own planned order numbers. We will auto-assign if you don't provide one. So, for example, on this screen, I could actually say add a planned order. And it will add a line item right here for me. And I come in and say, here, I want to make 50. And it puts it on the schedule for whatever that date is, 5/13. So it's in this record. It was already read. So it's included in this number now.
But you'd have to save it for it to give it an order
Yep.
number?
As soon as I save it, it'll give it the order number. Maybe a refresh.
Commit changes.
Oh, thank you. Did I just do a refresh? Oh, thank you.
Save is the view.
Right. Thank you. Yep. So the commit changes. Applied the next order number. Now it's still unfirmed. Make sure to check that if you're really planning to do it, and that will persist it. It'll keep it there for the next time MRP regenerates. So I can create planned orders on my own. That's one way to do it. You're going to find that on the calendar, which is the next thing we're going to look at in a little bit. Know that you can create a planned order there as well. But these were all generated by the system. And the only really way I can see that, I think, from this screen is that A, it's unfirmed, and it's got a number on it that's in the sequence.
Are you able from this screen to convert it to a batch?
Not yet, but we're headed there.
Okay.
Yep.
How did you go about doing that before?
I will show you. Yeah.